Hi everyone, I'm Vladyslav Novikov, and joining me again is Andriy Dobriansky, Director of Communication at the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America. Andriy, hello.
Hi, good to be back with you.
Yeah, so a big new news about everything, Trump, Russia, nuclear situation. So we can start. Trump called Medvedev stupid over his nuclear threats and said he sent one or two nuclear submarines to Russia shows as a precaution after the ceasefire ultimatum on Ukraine. Hearing something like this from Trump used to be unthinkable.
Yes, I mean we've definitely seen a change in perspective, not just from President Trump, but also somebody like J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, who's one of the strongest voices against helping Ukraine for a long time. Even he has changed his talking points because of what the president has done, and I mean, this is really up to the work of Ukraine. I really have to credit President Zelensky's team, the different diplomats who've been communicating with the Trump diplomatic corps as well, slowly but surely showing and demonstrating to President Trump that he can get his Nobel Peace Prize if he continues helping Ukraine at a much greater pace. So we already heard of the deal made in July of this year to have weapons purchased through with European money sent to Ukraine. We know the first tranche of them have gone through. We also know that better weapons are included in that, including the ERAMs, which were made of cheaper parts, but still a longer distance than missiles that were provided before. And specifically, the strategy that Ukraine has employed very successfully over the last month, if not earlier, but specifically in the last month, demonstrating that they can cut down the supply of oil and or natural gas coming out of Russia. That specifically is something that President Trump sees as a win-win. Ukraine targets the facilities that are helping Russia invade it, but also it opens up a market for American liquefied natural gas and any other export of fossil fuel to Europe. So for this instance, I think he sees the opportunity to pressure Russia in a way that he doesn't have to, because he was not willing to engage with Russia militarily. But he sees that supporting Ukraine in this endeavor will help both America and Ukraine.
Trump also called Putin a paper tiger for failing in a war that was supposed to last a week, and said he is disappointed in him. Trump is on fire today.
Yes, yes. I mean, we've heard the phrases "paper tiger." We've heard many of the things that he mentioned in his speech today, as well as recently at the United Nations. These are things that many experts have been talking about. Our surprise, I think, is just the fact that Trump is including that, and it's definitely different than the rhetoric he did before the election. It's different than the rhetoric he had in the first couple of months, especially at the contentious meeting in the White House with Zelensky. But everything since then, Ukraine has demonstrated that they are willing to do whatever it takes to be a good partner for the United States so that they can have that partner in their continued defense of the homeland.
Trump still says a Zelensky-Putin meeting is necessary. How could that even happen, and will it?
I don't believe it's going to happen. I know that he mentioned that today in his major speech about having that, but I think he just, in that instance, referred to something that he had talked to all summer, because we clearly have seen the rhetoric of the last month that both President Trump, Marco Rubio, others have said that it's clear, even J.D. Vance said it's clear that Russia doesn't want to meet with Ukraine. And it's also clear that, as President Zelensky and his team have said, for the times that there have been meetings between a Russian delegation and Ukrainian delegation, nothing has happened. So why keep doing this if Russia isn't willing to actually seriously talk?
Yeah, and Trump getted hundreds of generals and admirals. He and Vance called it friendly meeting, but we all understand it's unprecedented and not just for show, right?
It is, I don't know what word I can use without it being inflammatory. Unprecedented is a good word because we've never done this. It is something that an autocrat does. We've seen this from, Stalin's Soviet Union, Mao Zedong, bringing in all the generals so they can listen to the wisdom of the great leader. This is not, as J.D. Vance said in the Oval Office last week, something that normally happens. because you said hundreds. It's 800 generals and command leaders across the entire world. There is no general that is sitting in Asia or Africa right now to man the post. Now, the United States Army is very different. The United States Armed Forces, sorry, are different than, say, an autocratic ruler where without the general, they can't do anything. We have non-commissioned staff. We have petty officers who can do the job, but it's still very odd and not wise to pull all of them, especially because you're talking about people who do drug operations in South America to counter that versus the people who are working on special operations in Syria or the Middle East. These are not people that work on the same types of projects. So there's no reason for them to be in the same room together. They have gone on a career track that is wildly separate from some of their other compatriots in the armed services. So the point of it seems to be that Pete Hegseth wanted to give a motivational speech to them, which is insane. He walked around on stage as if he were selling something. He actually did sell his book. He said, he promoted his book so they can purchase and read for themselves. And then President Trump came out and gave his speech that was very low energy. Did not talk about talked about a lot of domestic issues. We have crossed the point where the politicization of Trump's speech is now shocking. And any other president, were he to mention political rhetoric like that the Democrats don't do anything, the sleepy Joe Biden was horrible that has no purpose in a commander-in-chief speech to the military. So even that was shocking. And at the very beginning, President Trump, mentioned that he was told that these generals wouldn't be applauding or responding because that's what the military does. They're not there to give support or condemnation. They are the employees. They are the subservients of the commander in chief. And yet when Trump said that, we knew that he was going to be upset. Speaking to this room of, it's not just the 800 generals, it's all the petty officers that came with him as well. We're talking about a massive amount of people, and he would get no response from that. And we know that he would be upset at that. And that's probably why he had a low energy speech, because he could not get the crowd to cheer like he does at his big rallies. So yes, it was a very odd speech. We saw that Pete Hegseth did whatever he did to talk about the fact that there are going to be new standards, but there were also new orders that were issued today. One of which is the fact announced by Hegseth that he's going to be radically changing the Inspector General office of the United States military. We know that the Inspector General of the Army is currently investigating his use of the Signal app and how he ended up disclosing publicly that a strike was happening by the United States. So that's something that's to happen. And then a lot of people are anticipating that while these generals are here, he will fire some of them because there has been a stated goal of this administration to reduce the size of the military command structure. And that means eliminating admirals and generals from the United States military.
Mm-hmm. And one more interesting detail. Today, the Telegraph reported, seeking Western politician and military source, that NATO may set up an air defense zone over Western Ukraine to shoot down Russia drones and missiles. Normally, I wouldn't believe it, but with Trump pressing Putin and this meeting of generals, I'm starting to wonder.
It's been a sensible proposal from the very beginning of this war to have an air cover, at least for part of the country, not least of which because of the deliveries of Western supplies. It would be so much easier if we could have plane deliveries onto Ukrainian territory and not solely rely on airports in surrounding countries. It just makes for a better delivery system for the military issues. We would love that for humanitarian and others. I'm sure that presidential visits from other countries, they would love to get off the airport in, Danilo Airport in Lviv and just take a quicker train over to Kyiv for their visits. So there's something to be said about developing a safe zone. It is also important for the view of Ukraine's partners as we look ahead to the possibility, even if there were some kind of ceasefire of some kind of what the path forward is for reconstruction, to have more Western firms, CEOs of major corporations come and visit Ukraine. And the only way they're going to do that is by landing directly into Ukraine, into a safe zone, and not having to deal with air raids in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Prepare for war, says Pete Hexet. War with who? China? Maybe we should deal with Putin first.
It is very odd. The entire rhetoric of this administration, one of the reasons that they have imposed tariffs on different metals, whether it's aluminum or steel, copper, is because they claim, and this is what they've done months ago, they claim that this is because America needs to be ready for a war. But to your question, war against who? Who are we fighting? The United States hasn't been in an active conflict zone. We pulled out in Afghanistan of 2021. We pulled out of Iraq in 2011. It's been a long time since America has been at war, and it's very clear that America does not want to get into war. It's very unpopular anytime people talk about deploying U.S. troops into other situations. Yeah. So somehow the Trump administration is getting away with saying we are getting ready for war, at the same time saying we're not deploying our troops. Well, what are you talking about at the same time? We also know that they are very happy using military munitions against objects that cannot defend themselves. These boats in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico that they keep shooting down without any kind of basic law of the seas or military intervention laws. What they're doing is basically unlawful by shooting people without identifying who they are. Maybe there are some refugees on the. We have no idea who they're shooting, but they're summarily killing people without the ability to, who have absolutely no ability to respond. In contrast to states like Russia, who are, they are flying over NATO countries. Why are we not doing the same thing we're doing with the boats, with Russian boats? We know that there are tankers with the possibility of deploying drones. This is something that the United States military could easily interdict, but yet we're not doing that. So it's clear that there's a dividing line of what they're interested in doing.
Mm-hmm. I have one theory, and I want to tell you about it. Could Putin be provoking NATO on China's orders? So Trump got angry at Putin and started being tougher with him. All because Beijing told Putin to act that way. If that's true?
I think the thing with our enemies, we know they work together. We know that China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, to a lesser extent, other rogue states work together. But it is not the same as a military alliance like NATO or the West, meaning that they are ready to accept help from each other, but they will never defend each other. So we know that China would sell Russia out and not do anything for Russia's defense if Russia were invaded. We saw in Iran, just at the beginning of this year, Russia and Iran signed a defense agreement. They did nothing when Iran was bombed. So we know that they have some kind of relationship, but it is not the same kind of relationship as NATO or any Western alliance, because they're very suspicious of each other and not very trustworthy in general. So as far as what China wants from Russia and the West, they are very happy with Russia continuing this war with Ukraine specifically. But as far as what happens with NATO, China could ask for that, but Russia is also comfortable with doing that. They've been doing that for 2 decades. They've been poisoning people. Cyber attacks in Estonia beginning in the early 2000s. This is not something new. I was in Lithuania when I was in 2015, and I was in the parliament building in Lithuania while it came under a cyber attack where nobody could use their phones because of the Russians. This is not something new. They have done this continuously. The problem is that we, as the West, have not been countering it, and we have not been countering with offensive operations on cyber. We have not been doing it by escorting planes out. We just had an incident over Alaska in the last 2 weeks where finally American planes came and escorted Russian planes away from American territorial skies. But that's not happening in Europe, and that's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And one more topic. I talk about shutdown. Is it one of the main topics in the US, and how much is it distracting from Russia's war against Ukraine?
It is the only topic. It is the main topic.
I have one more topic, Epstein.
It's not as high as Epstein. If you watch the news in the United States, that'll be the top topic. We had 6 mass shootings this weekend, 6 over 4 states, and it was barely covered as much as the shutdown. We did not cover what was happening in Ukraine as much as we have. The shutdown is dominating everything because American domestic politics. It is tied in with what people's health insurance will be beginning this month or at the end of October into November, and then even more at the beginning of the year. It is tied with people's salaries for any kind of federal employment. Mail carriers, we have an enormous amount of people employed by the mail service, space service, etc. A lot of people will be without employment. And right now, we are almost assured 100% that there will be a shutdown beginning. It is the 30th, so if there's no deal by tonight, and there will be no deal, government shutdown begins tomorrow, and then it is very likely that this continues for a minimum of through the weekend, and then but because both the Senate and the House of Representatives have pledged not to come back until next week. So we will see if maybe next week, when they come back, they can come to a short-term deal that extends the budget. But in the meantime, we're going to have a shutdown. And if that's the case, we'll see which political negotiator says, well, we really have to make that deal. Because once we get into a shutdown, then it seems like the negotiations can start all over again.
Mm-hmm. Could you tell more about the last topic, what you mentioned? If I'm right to hear you, you talk about a mass shooting.
Yes. We had 6 mass shootings just over the weekend. So one was a individual who drove his car into a church. Then that car had some improvised bombs in it, but he ended up coming out of the car and shooting people within the church. Then the church caught fire. We still don't know to this day how many people are identified as dead in the church. There are many people still not found who were claimed to go to that church. There were shopping centers, individual homes who were shot up by people. This, unfortunately, has become so regular in this country that one mass shooting on the news will be interrupted by another one. It's not, it used to be that a mass shooting was so irregular that it would be the whole news for a day or two or even a week. But since the United States is so entrenched in political infighting, and we haven't been able to do anything to address this as a nation, that it's unfortunately becoming more and more prevalent.
Mm-hmm. Sad to hear it. But I won't talk about this topic. I mean, Epstein.
Yeah.
There's a new scandal, new names, and even Elon Musk has been mentioned.
We know. We know at a certain level there are people who are so wealthy that they feel that no laws can touch them, not least of which our enemy. And we know that Elon Musk's father likes to visit Russia as well. So we know that there are certain levels of people who feel that the law doesn't apply to them. The Epstein scandal is not leaving. President Trump thought he could use that scandal to attack the current government back in 2024, saying that the Democrats are hiding everything. But once he came back as president at the beginning of this year, he's shown no interest in letting the public know what exactly Epstein was tried for. It seems, if anything, he's trying to quiet the people who only know, like Ghislaine Maxwell, who is the girlfriend and assistant of Epstein, who helped him lure all these women to be sexually trafficked. Mm-hmm. So that's somebody that Trump is actually actively trying to help by giving her less of a prison sentence. And in the end, though, more documents are coming out. In fact, we are going to have, when Congress comes back next week, there is a discharge petition, which is a way that if you get enough signatures on a petition within Congress, then nobody can block it. Like, it has to come up for a vote. And so we have crossed how many people have already signed that no matter what the Republicans do, because President Trump doesn't want this to be voted on, no matter what they do, they have attained enough signatures. So we should see next week if Congress comes back, if there's no shutdown.
Mhm,
If there's no
mhm.
shutdown and they go back into voting, that's something that they could do. But thankfully for Trump, the shutdown can shut this down, and there will not be a vote until the shutdown is over.
Mhm. And one more curious story. Jimmy Kimmel is back. Is that another hit against Trump?
I think it demonstrates that it was mostly political pressure that forced the companies that air Jimmy Kimmel through their affiliates. It was political pressure from the White House that forced them to take it off, because I've been involved in numerous campaigns to get Tucker Carlson removed from networks. This is a long-term thing. Networks or television channels don't just take people off. It takes a long time to convince them that they're going to lose money, because people won't they will boycott your advertisers. They will harass your advertisers. But within 24 to 48 hours, Jimmy Kimmel was removed from. Actually, within 24 hours, he was removed because of a controversy that started where people were blaming him for being insensitive to the death of Charlie Kirk. What's more obvious is that the public pressure came after that, where people were canceling their subscriptions to Disney, wanted to boycott Disney because they own the corporation that airs Jimmy Kimmel. So there was more ground up support for Jimmy Kimmel than there was ground up support to cancel Jimmy Kimmel. And now I think this gets into the weeds of broadcasting, but since Disney is a publicly owned corporation, there are members of the stockholders board of Disney who want an explanation exactly what was discussed by the CEO. Did the political pressure come all the way from the top? And if that's the case, they need to disclose any of those documents to the shareholders, or else they might force a vote of no confidence. So this is massive repercussions in the business world, less so than what actually happened to Jimmy Kimmel, who was back on the air with massive ratings, as he was the #1 searched show on television before this. And simply whatever President Trump said, that he was not popular, had no ratings, just wasn't true.
Andriy, thank you so much. That was interesting. I was glad to see you.
Thank you. And I can't wait for our next conversation.
Yeah.